Hey friends, we're back after a little bit of a break here with you and Yu-Gi-Oh! Featuring John Andrade this time. You may not know who this is, but my goodness, has he been busy behind the scenes with Yu-Gi-Oh! John is responsible for putting on an incredible event that happened in October in New York City, actually, my old hometown, no, not there anymore, that featured pretty much the entire cast and a screening of The Dark Side of Dimensions. But John, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself for people who don't know who you are?
So my name is John Andrade. If you haven't guessed, I'm a huge Yu-Gi-Oh fan, New York local, and yeah, I am the person behind Yu-Gi-Oh! Dark Side of Dimensions event that took place on October 5th, 2024 at the Museum of
Just great stuff. And I actually got a chance to go back and rewatch the panel. And nice haircut, by the way, I can relate. But, you know, one of the things that really kind of jumped out at me, and I've been lucky enough to do some panels with some of the voice actors before, is how different yours was compared to most of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Panels you see out there. And I know I'm kind of jumping ahead. We'll certainly wind it back. But was part of this a labor of love from like the theater side of you? Because the questions you were asking were just so zoomed in on that.
Well, yes. So my big thing was every voice actor that I had as part of the event, they've been interviewed dozens of times. I actually prior to the day, I watched hours of their interviews. And I always thought to myself, like, well, you know, the same questions get asked every single time. Your favorite thing to shoot? What was your what's your favorite line to say? Do you play Yu-Gi-Oh! In real life? And I thought to myself, I have to keep this interesting and to make it one of a kind. I have to ask questions that have never been asked before. So that helped a lot. Helped and also made it a little bit harder to come up with my questions. But I think I did okay, and I got some great answers.
I definitely think so too. And you're right, you know, a lot of the questions are like, well, if Joey had a pizza shop, what would his favorite ingredients be? And you're like, that is a cool question. I'd love to know that too. But when you've got the actor's time and you have like everybody in the audience just like really hooked in, I think it is great that you took like the time to highlight stuff. That's obviously where we're going with the story, Tarantino style, right? But let's rewind it back. You know, was this something you just kind of like were joshing about with friends and they said, yeah, let's do it? Or was this something you had been kind of winding up for a long time?
Okay, so I'm not even lying here. So I had actually just gotten the job at the museum, and I was working, and it was a slow day, and I was actually watching Dark Side of Dimensions on my phone. And somebody from upstairs came down and was like, "Hey, you know, we got a hole in the animation department. We need something to show on this day. Does anyone have any ideas?" And of course, the person was like, "Hey, you're an anime nerd. Like, what should we show?" And I just like looked up and I was like, "You know, Dark Side of Dimensions only got a limited release. Maybe we should show that." And then first answer I got was absolutely not. And I was like, "Okay, thanks for that." And then I kept pitching it more and more. And then after a while, they were just like, "Hey, you know your thing? Yeah, let's go with it. There's another hole in the calendar, so we're giving it to you."
See, that's cool. I didn't realize that it wasn't something they just accepted on like the first go, right? Because some projects are like a labor of love. Like you really have to be like, now can we do it? Now can we do it? Once you finally got the go-ahead, that's a pretty intimidating assignment. You're like, okay, well, I guess I've got to reach out to Yu-Gi-Oh! Voice actors. Did you know anybody, or like, did you have to just kind of cold call, you know, Yami, Yugi, and Seto Kaiba themselves?
Well, okay, so right after they gave me the go-ahead on that, they were just like, "Okay, we'll let you do this, but can you get the voices of Yugi and Kaiba here?" And I was like, "I know a few people, which I'm friends with Greg Abbey and Wayne Grayson, and I I was lucky. Sorry. So I am friends with a few of the voice actors, but there were a few others who I hadn't met yet, like Eric Stewart. So there was an event in San Antonio, Texas, NostalgiaCon, where there was a huge reunion.
Yeah, I missed that one too. It's just wherever you are, I never happen to be.
It was a lot of fun. Honestly, I was just surprised that they were able to pull it off with like all these voice actors, and it was a great time. And I still had autographs to get, so I went up to every single voice actor and I was like, hey, by the way, I have this thing in the works. I would love for you to be a part of it. I'd love to tell you more about it. And then, like, to my surprise, everyone who I spoke to was just like, yeah, that sounds super awesome. We'd love to be a part of it in some way, shape, or form if we can. And then, things kind of snowballed from there.
So you had the venue, finally you had the guests. In terms of getting the word out, was it just like, hey guys, I got the Yu-Gi-Oh! Voice actors here, and everybody kind of flocked in? Or was it that same sort of progressive, like, no, we really got to let people know this is happening?
No. So, yeah, I don't have the biggest following as far as the Yu-Gi-Oh! Community goes. So, just as fate would have it, or the cards. I recently got this tattoo. I don't know if you can see.
Oh yeah, I could definitely see that. Nice.
Yeah. So I recently had gotten this tattoo almost a year ago now. And I was working at the museum one day, and this person pulls up to me and just goes, "Hey, is that Yusei's Mark of the Crimson Dragon?" And I said, "Yeah." And it turned out to be Monty from the Montyverse.
Oh,
and
okay.
We started talking about Yu-Gi-Oh! For like over an hour. Not to my bosses. But so we started talking, and I explained to him everything that I wanted to do. And he was just like, I would love to be involved. I'd love to like help you give back to this community. And Monty has a wonderful YouTube channel and is what's it called? A great reporter on all things nerdy. And I can truly say I couldn't have done it without him. He's the one who actually put out the word to everyone across the nation. Which, because of him, we had people coming from different states. We had people from Texas. We had people from Florida. One of the best stories I had ever heard was someone on one of his videos. Some people met, and in the comments, and people were driving up from Florida, and they picked people up in North Carolina, and they all drove together to New York for this event. And I thought that was phenomenal.
Yeah, that is really cool. Gosh. Well, I have to remember like my own experience just going to see Dark Side Dimensions. It was like a huge vibe to actually go see it in theaters, and we were all, cheering and jeering depending on whether or not Seto Kaiba was being funny, etc. How was the vibe when, because we've seen the panel and stuff online, but what we don't see is everybody like in the theater watching it. So how was that once you actually got everybody like locked in there?
Oh, it was terrifying. It was terrifying and just amazing, because in the beginning I had to do an intro for the film, which of course
yeah.
but here it dropped, and in that moment I was trying not to throw up, but also just the fact that like everyone was there for this one sole thing, and it went from absolutely not to here we are all together by this one thing that has united us all. And once the movie played, when individual characters showed up on screen, everyone cheered, everyone laughed, and I think the best pop of the night was when the Pharaoh returned, and just the screams. I actually went to a special screening of Dark Side of Dimensions, and just like this was just blew that reaction out of the water. This was incredible, and yeah, what a send off to give. Honestly, yeah, the best Yu-Gi-Oh! Film of all time.
I definitely think it's the one that like does the most like heavy lifting in terms of story. I mean, there's still some other good ones, including like the old Red Eyes Black Dragon one from like the 90s that nobody's seen.
God, I haven't even thought about that.
Well, speaking of the throwback, we'll come back to the event though, but it is you and Yu-Gi-Oh! We've heard a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! We've heard how you've helped Yu-Gi-Oh! But how did you get in? Like, were you a fan from the beginning like many others were, or did you kind of get late? Because that Yusei Fudo tattoo kind of says a lot.
Yeah. Okay, so I got into Yu-Gi-Oh! Around 7th grade, so I was about 12 years old. Funny enough, I'm a huge Pokemon fan too, and I have this huge Pokemon card collection.
Hey, that's okay.
And but I remember seeing Yu-Gi-Oh! Like people were dueling in school, and I just like kind of like looked at it, scoffed it off, and then every single one of my friends was like, "Yeah, there's this like Yu-Gi-Oh! Event. It's called the Saga of the Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon," and I was like, "What's a Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon?" They're like, "No, we're all gonna like after school, we're gonna watch it together." And I remember watching it with them and like watching Kaiba fuse the three blue eyes, and I was like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. So I went back and watched the rest, and then from then on, uh, my poor mother was forced to buy me hundreds of thousands of cards, and yeah, it spun from there. And I have a couple of other things, claims to fame as far as the Yu-Gi-Oh thing. But as far as tattoo, out of all of the protagonists, I think Yusei Fudo is the one who speaks to me the most. And he is my favorite character. After all, I'm wearing this
Oh yeah, dude, nice.
shirt, which was made by a lovely artist by the name of Megan Fabry, who I honestly think she should start selling these. They would do great.
It's good stuff. It's good stuff. Yusei really reaches like a lot of people's hearts because Yami Yugi, like, he's got it all together for the most part. If not, he just kind of bulldozes through it. What I love about Yusei is it's a much more like realistic thing. It's like, no, I'm kind of from this neighborhood. I'm gonna make it. Like, just trust me. Like, I'm just as good as the other guy. Yeah, I don't have the same like clothing or equipment, but like I've got it. And yeah, I mean the voice acting for him too. Whether it's the Japanese or the English version. You mentioned being friends with Greg. Greg does a super amazing job on that character and sounds like acting wise totally different than Tristan. It's a totally different vibe.
Yeah, it was weird hearing his voice in the beginning because I was just like, oh, they got at the time I didn't know his name. I was like, oh, they got Tristan's voice actor to do it, and then yeah, he completely made it all his own. I think the part that cemented my favoritism towards Yusei was the episode where he's stuck in prison,
Oh yeah.
and all of the other inmates like make him a makeshift deck out of like. They each have one card. They all give it to him, and the warden is just talking trash to him. And I always love the line where he's looking up at him, the warden's looking down, and he just goes, "This deck carries the hopes and dreams of every man in this prison." And I was just like, "That. That's it. That's
Yeah." Even I was just like, "Oh God, I ain't ready for that." Well, that's cool. You mentioned, the card scene around, your friends when you were kind of growing up and everybody never was going. Were you active in like the card gaming side? And there's no wrong answer here. I'm not trying to like suss anything out.
Yeah, I was. I've done a number of regionals, nationals. I actually was at the 2003 Yu-Gi-Oh! World Championship at Madison Square Garden.
Oh man, I have told so many friends I didn't know that was going on, right? And so at the time, I was a New Yorker, I could have gone, but like it wasn't until for me. Like 05 is when I got, I think, a little bit more serious into the card game side. Like 03, I was much more in like the cosplay and the anime stuff. So you got something that just went right over my head.
Yeah, it was super random. I had just gotten an invitation. I hadn't signed up to anything. I just got an invitation in the mail, and they were like, "Yeah, you're invited to the Yu-Gi-Oh! World Championship." And I was like, I don't even think my record was that great, but I guess I'll do it. The program is actually sitting behind me on the shelf behind me. I don't know if my head might be blocking it, but yeah, the program that day is there, and that was the weekend that the Lost Millennium had just come out, so everyone was just getting to see the Elemental Heroes for the very first time. It was going to kick off GX, and yeah, the amount of people, like Madison Square Garden got filled, which to this day now, almost 30 years later, I'm going back to Monday Night Raw on March 10th, and I like get to really soak in how big the place is, and I was like, this place was just filled with Yu-Gi-Oh fans. That's incredible.
You really take it back, and I'm not trying to bring myself in too much, but on the New York side of Yu-Gi-Oh, do you remember that era where like you'd be in Manhattan and they would have hot dog carts just selling singles? That's how popular the game was. Nobody believes me when I say that. I'm glad to meet somebody else like, oh yeah, the hot dog carts are out there. Well, that's still cool. I still remember all my old shops and whatnot. Okay, let's flash forward before we get all accused of being grandparents, but. Bringing Yu-Gi-Oh! Back to New York City is such a huge thing. And I noticed, at the event, back at the museum and everything, there was like cosplayers, there were card gamers, there were anime fans. Did you make any new friends that you like kept, like, creating bonds beyond time, to make a little Yu-Gi-Oh! Reference?
Yeah, absolutely. So at the event itself, yes, I did make a ton of friends. And first speaking of the event, before I jump into that, I just wanted to say the one thing that I wanted to make sure to drive home about this event, that it just wasn't like a hey, let's have fun. It was a tribute to Mutsuba Takahashi,
Yeah.
who passed away, and I that was my main thing. And um, but yes, that's the beautiful thing about this game for me. Through the years, I've made friends who I now consider family. At the event, I've met multiple people who still keep up with me on Instagram or Facebook or whatever it is. But through the years, in college, I've met friends who I still speak to this day, and I'm even friends with Jen Silverman, who is currently on Yu-Gi-Oh! 7 as Asana, who I met 22 years ago because of the game. And she saw me
Ow!
playing, and she's like, "I have cards too. I'll bring mine tomorrow." And then we just became friends.
Well, that's cool. We learned something new about Jen. She's been on the channel before and is such a great voice actor, too. I love that, and this is something you probably appreciate so much, having interacted with all these Yu-Gi-Oh! Voice actors. It's a new generation. All the kids they have in Sevens and Go Rush, they're everyday duelists like you and I. It's so cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really cool to actually going back to friends, it's really cool to imagine for example, Jen being like somebody's Yugi. It's there are all of these other voice actors who I've recently met who are around my age who are just like, yeah, I started watching Duel Monsters and now I'm somebody else's hero who plays children's card games, and it's great. And yeah, it is really cool to be friends with everyone. I even think I told Greg at some point, I was like, hey, by the way, when I met you, I'm so sorry I cried in front of you. I totally did.
I should laugh. I mean, it's just kind of funny because I imagine
no.
Greg just being like, "Oh, I have that effect on people."
Yeah, no, I was just like, yeah, dude, I'm so sorry I did that. Like, yeah, I definitely cried in front of him and I cried in front of Dan Green, for sure. And Dan was gracious enough to give me a hug. So happy. So.
I think we're blessed in the Yu-Gi-Oh fan base, and I'm not throwing shade on any other, community voice actors or anything like that, but there's just something different about the Yu-Gi-Oh voice acting group, like that particular cast and what they do and how they interact with fans. I don't know what playbook they got that nobody else has, but you're right that Dan and everybody, they're so about like process and not, it's nice to meet us, the voice actor. No, it's nice to meet you. It's an honor that you want to meet us, and that's how Dan and them carry themselves. It's so cool.
Yeah, they really live up to the whole hero type for sure. And I can truly say I've been blessed with every interaction that I've had. And I can't believe I have all of these cards signed by my heroes.
Well, speaking of heroes, you're giving people something to aspire to as well. With that in mind, now that you got this under your belt, right, you lived the dream, is there any other like weird like project? I'm not trying to out anything if it's like top secret, but if there's something you're like, oh, wouldn't this be cool if we could get it done?
Yes. So there are a couple of things I have that are non-Yu-Gi-Oh related. But also as far as Yu-Gi-Oh goes, I am in the works of a new event. I can't give out too much because nothing has been booked or.
That's fair. We could just put stay tuned down in the comments and just leave a link for when that official announcement goes out. But I'm not trying to spoil any surprises.
Oh no, not at all. I just I have a term that I use where I just say bar napkin because I think the best ideas have always started being drawn on a bar napkin, kind of like Eastman when he first drew the Ninja Turtles on a napkin from a pizza parlor. But yeah, it's everything's still being drawn out in the bar napkin, and I would love to have something by the summer. Right now, it's looking more like autumn or maybe even next winter. But I all I will say about it is I'm currently scouring the earth for voice actors that have not been previously seen in other events, and I would like to have the ultimate Yu-Gi-Oh! In ways that has never been done.
Okay, well, you got my attention. I was like, wow, I can't even compute what that is, but that's going to be exciting. Well, with that in mind, are there any shout outs you want to give to anybody as we wrap things up?
Yeah, I would love to give a shout out to the Montyverse. If you're into comic books, anime, literally anything nerdy, please go check out his on TikTok, it's on Instagram, on literally everything, and it will be updated on everything you need to know. I'd also love to give a shout out to Megan Fabry. Again, did my t-shirt. She's done countless others. She also has done artwork for a few of the voice actors. She is at Art by Meg Fabry on Instagram. And yes, she does take Yu-Gi-Oh! Commissions, which I think is awesome. And I'd also like to give a shout out to Jesse Burberick, who is my boss, and it is because of him that we actually have a that we actually did have a Yu-Gi-Oh! Event, because he actually for it a lot. So yeah, I would like to thank him on that. And lastly, I don't mean to make this sound like it's an Oscar. My mom, thank you for buying me cards every single chance you got. I know I ran you thousands of dollars on Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards, but thank you.
We'll make sure everybody says thanks to John's mom in the comments. Well, John, it's actually been a really great time, and we'll make sure that some of the photographs and the video, like the panel we were discussing, are in the YouTube link description, because I want to make sure that people see this. It was a really cool interview, and you really were great at like pulling things out of Dan Green and Eric Stuart that, again, nobody had asked them before, and that's like thank you for your service is the best way to say it.
It has been a genuine pleasure to, as I like to say, it's a pleasure to give back to a community that has done so much for me as it is.
Amen to that. Amen to that.